Okay, so this is probably going to be one of the most niche videos with the most narrow audiences on here. But what I want to do is have a look at my first ever White Dwarf and go through some old Hammer nostalgia. So hopefully this will be interesting to someone. I'm sure there are plenty of old people out there who want a nostalgia trip, or plenty of newer people as well who are curious about some of the stranger parts of what Games Workshop and the games used to be. I got rid of all my old White Dwarfs when I moved out of my parents' house a while ago, and I've kind of regretted it ever since. I used to go over them, revisit them whenever I needed inspiration for a new army all the time, and I could never quite shake my first one being my favourite. So when I saw the listing come up on eBay by chance of a batch of White Dwarfs, including my first ever one, I knew that I had to take the opportunity and rebuy them. Maybe this is the folly of having adult money, I don't know. So I'm just opening the package now, and oh my god. This is White Dwarf number 280 through 284, and this was my first 5 ever White Dwarfs. So my plan for this video is just to have a read through it and kind of revisit, get out without breaking the bags, have a read through it and just kind of revisit what made me fall in love with Games Workshop and the Warhammer setting in the first place. In reverse order, this is 284. This is the release of the Beast of Chaos for 6th edition Fantasy. Wow, so I think this is when the first Cadian shock troops came out in plastic. And this is all around the Eye of Terror campaign. Quite timely given that the Cadians are just being re-released right now. Again, this is all around the Eye of Terror campaign. Oh yes, this one came with the free novella. I remember reading that. That's funny. £3.50. Can't remember how much they are now. I'm not going to fact check anything as I go through this, and I'll probably end up making loads of mistakes and erroneous assumptions, which I'll end up correcting in captions or something like that. Otherwise, just if I make any grievous errors, sling a correction down in the comments. So yeah, my biggest fantasy army was Lizard Men, and it's because they were Lizard Men and Beast of Chaos. My first 2 White Dwarfs really coloured my what it is about Games Workshop and the setting that I really like. So in fantasy it was always Lizard Men and Beast of Chaos, and then this is the one, 280, my first ever one, and then in 40k it's always been Orcs and Inquisition, and I think that if I remember the contents of this correctly, we will see why as we go through it. So yeah, White Dwarf 280. So is there a date on this? Back panel, look at this, square bases with goblin green edges. That's 6th edition Fantasy Lizard Men versus Skaven, classic matchup. God, can't see a date on the front. It's probably somewhere really obvious I'm not seeing it. Is it on the spine? No. So I think this is 2001. 2003, that's later than I thought. Okay, so I would have been 12 years old. So we are in the height of 3rd edition 40k with the Eye of Terror campaign. So this was a global campaign that Games Workshop ran, and the idea was that everyone was participating in it all the time. And 6th edition fantasy. So this is just as the Lizard Men were being released, if you can remember that timeline. This is also, if we look at the contents here, we've got some specialist games. So I think this is just after Inquisitor was released. So this is what really put me on the Inquisition thing. They've always been one of my favourite factions to this day. And it's because they were really trying to push Inquisitor, but they never really explained what it actually was. So there's also some Battlefleet Gothic content in here as well. I think that this is one of the things that's really interested me about wanting to look through this again, is that I got this as like my first resource into Games Workshop to try and work out what it actually was, what the games were, what I was supposed to be doing. It was before I got any rule books, before I got into any factions. I think it was even before I'd chosen what game to pick up. And I just really wonder how that contrasts with someone picking up the game now, with all the resources that's available to them. You know, this was the only place I could get information, really. We didn't have YouTube, and I mean even forums were in their infancy. There was actually an official Games Workshop forum at the time. I don't know if you can even imagine that existing now. They just used to really over moderate all of the comments and delete people's posts and stuff when they were complaining. But okay, let's kind of go through it. New releases. Wow. Okay, what was this card game? Warcry. Yeah. I never had any of that, but again, they never really explained what anything was. You just kind of had to know, or someone had to tell you. I don't know if that was intentional or just poor marketing, or just to make you go into the store, so you'd have to talk to the people there and work out what was going on. So Tomb King's releases, yeah, I think this was just after the Tomb Kings were released. I mean, people who are newer to fantasy and Age of Sigmar probably won't even know what Tomb Kings were, but oh my god, they were your standard Egyptian themed fantasy army, but they were all undead, obviously, heavily chariot and cavalry based. The Blood Angels Bile Predator. Okay, so this is still my favourite my favourite 40k tank. I don't know what it is about it, just something about that that like stocky look with the like really short snub-nosed turret. And yeah, again, that all comes from here. These first few White Dwarfs really coloured my perceptions of 40k and informed what I thought was cool even to now. There's a little note about a price rise on paint. Please note the prices on our paint and ink pots are changing in the near future. From March the 31st, the UK price of a pot of paint will be £1.75. So now is a great time to stock up on your paint. And they used to come in these old twist top lids. I had the full set of every paint in those style pots. And I mean, I don't understand how their paint pots have changed so many times and always been absolutely terrible, because they just all dried out instantly. Rubbish. News about Forge World. Fire Warrior, the PC game. Absolutely terrible game. But you know, if you can find it, I recommend playing it through. It's very quick to play. Very strange that it was released. It was all set from the perspective of a Tau Fire Warrior, which is a bit odd. You know, you would think the Imperium is so heavily perceived as the general protagonist that it's quite strange that they released something from the perspective of a Tau Fire Warrior. I have got no idea what this is. I'm going to be honest. Oh yeah, okay, here we go. So my first 40k army were Orcs, and my second 40k army were Demon Hunters. Oh my god, I love these old metal Grey Knight models. I think they're so much better than the modern plastics. The proportions and like the sizes compared to modern Space Marines just don't stack up. They look tiny, but there's something about just, I don't know, they look somehow less cartoony than the modern ones to me. And these Terminator models are so nice, but they were so expensive. It was one of those armies where the entire thing was metal. I mean, for people who have only known full plastic models with maybe the odd bit of fine cast, generally it was cheaper to get the plastic kits, and then if ever you had to get models that were metal, it was like hideously more expensive than the plastic. So there were a few armies which had the reputation of being like all metal, and Demon Hunters were definitely one of them. I mean, the Terminators are £30 for 5 guys. I mean, that's kind of standard now. Grey Knight Space Marines, so that would have been, yeah, two models in a blister pack for £6, which seems so cheap now, but it was so expensive at the time. And then if you wanted to have the squad leader and the special weapons guy, that was like a separate thing. And this guy is all one single piece metal model with a normal plastic Space Marine backpack. I can't believe they were still doing the Goblin Green bases this late. It's mad. Right, I read and reread this, and I really, really want to do a piece on converting some inquisitorial warbands or something. But wow. So there were rules in the Demon Hunters Codex. There was a special scenario where your opponent could take demons, and they could be summoned at the cost of sacrificing a unit. I don't think they would ever have been any more effective on the table than the unit that you were sacrificing them in favour of, but it was really fluffy, and I think the reason was because the Demon Hunters had so many abilities and weapons that were only good against demons that they needed an excuse to have more demons in them. And wow, this is really interesting. So yeah, it's all kind of coming back to me. So this is an article where they're discussing ways that you can make demon models that fit into your army, so that when you play against demon hunters, you can have these cool models. So these are for Andy Hoare's Sisters of Battle, and he's made these. I say the greater demons. I mean, the scale of these compared to modern greater demons is so tiny, but I think those are made out of. I would find out if I read the thing right, but I'm not going to do that. I think that these are made out of. So they're Inquisitor models with the torsos and the heads. I think they're the Death Cult Assassins, and it looks like Tyranid bits. It's Tyranid, what they called Raveners or something. So it's like the one with the snake-like body, and they look like, I don't think those are Gene Stealer hands, but they might be. They're too big, and yeah, some wings that look Tyranid as well. Yeah, that looks really cool. And then this guy, I don't know if it was in this. I don't know if it was in this issue. There was a full conversion guide on how to make this guy, and oh wow, it's such a weird mishmash of different models. I mean, the head is an old metal Beastman Ungor, and I think the body is from like the old Dark Elf Throne of Blood. I cannot remember what any of the stuff on its back's from. That looks like a Secret Slanesh head, an old one. And then some chain, and I really want to convert a demon host. I've written so many demon hunters army lists over the years, and Inquisition lists that contain demon hosts. I mean, they've never been good in the rules, but it's just such a cool opportunity to model something really, really good. And they never had an official model. They did. They had official models, but they were bad. They were bad models, and that's why I've scrubbed them from my memory. And I mean, why would you buy a demon host when you could convert something? And you make something so much better than the official models. They'll probably turn up later in this edition. Right, so this was A.D. Wood. So A.D. Wood. So I think he was kind of known for always doing orcs and like couldn't resist just orcifying everything. So he has made some Nurgle demons to fit in with his orc army. And this colour scheme has really stuck with me. And I just bet that it was he ran out of time to paint the stuff for this issue. But something about it just looks so cool. Like, if you can see this, the colour scheme is literally jet black with no highlights for all of the like detail and the cloth and stuff. The skin is green with maybe an ink wash. There's like loads of human flesh bits for the mutations. Like, I can't quite see it, but there's ones with really cool tentacles, which are from the Lost and the Damned kit. Is that what they were called? Yeah, that'll come up later in this as well. And then there's the metal bits are just silver with no shading or weathering or anything. And then like the teeth, hair, and bone bits are just dark brown. I'm torn between thinking that maybe he's run out of time to print the feature, and that it's actually like a stylistic choice, but something about it just looks really cool. I don't think I could ever bring myself to be that minimalist on anything, but oh man, it's such a choice, it's such a look. So this is just a little a short story about some, I think, Nurgle plague zombies. Oh man, this article confused me so much. So at the time, back in 2003, 40k had the reputation for being the simpler of the two main Games Workshop properties, and fantasy was considered to be the more in-depth for the more discerning wargamer who liked strategy and tactics and things, whereas 40k was seen a bit as a kind of casual game. And this article really really got me, because it gets quite in-depth about the use of fast cavalry in fantasy. And imagine you're reading this with absolutely no perception of what any of this means. It must be how like my family and girlfriend think when they hear me talk about it. Goblin green bases. Oh, look at those dwarves. They've got the goblin green flock on the top and everything. It's so funny how all the bases started out in second edition of being kind of goblin green on the top, and then goblin green, second edition 40k, I guess 5th edition fantasy, goblin green on the top and goblin green on the edges, and then they kind of let go of putting goblin green on the top and went to this more natural thing, but they still clung on to putting goblin green on the edges. Bring it back, I say. Oh yes, flesh hounds. Right, this is, in my opinion, this is one of Games Workshop's biggest mistakes, is the demon models that we all know now. Their look started in like pre-3rd edition 40k era, so in 2nd edition they all looked kind of like how they look now, except they were metal. And then in 3rd edition 40k they just changed the look of them completely, and then when all the plastics came out a couple of editions later, they changed all the looks back. And I know this is just bias because it's when I started in the hobby, but I just think the 3rd edition metal models look so much better than the current ones. I won't go into this in too much depth. Okay, wow. Here's a catalogue for all the fast attack choices they've just been talking about. So you can buy a single Bretonnian mounted squire for £4. It's so funny. You would go in and they would have them in blister packs on the shelf. So I'm trying to find something similar. I'll find a picture of one and put it up. So they would be on like a little peg, and you would just have to hope they had enough of the thing that you wanted. So if you wanted a unit of if you wanted 2 units of 10, 2 units of 5 Bretonnian mounted squires, the chances that we were going to have 10 of those things in stock was pretty slim. So this is a fun thing they used to do as well. So so if you look, a lot of the horses will have the same bodies, and then you can get like different heads for the horses to make them look more chaosy or more elven or whatever. And those parts were metal, so you would have the bodies of the horses would be plastic with metal heads, and they wouldn't stand up because they were like solid metal all the way through. And sometimes you would have plastic riders, sometimes you would have metal riders, sometimes you would have plastic riders with metal arms. So the Illyrian bowmen you can see here, these are metal pieces, and then so these wolf sprues here are plastic. So the Illyrian bowman seems to have been in metal. The Dragon Prince horse head was metal, but the body probably would have been plastic. It would have been the same as like the Empire Knight horse body or something. And it was quite difficult to get the metal and the plastic to stick together. So everyone would always have the riders falling off the horses, because people would think about painting them separately. It makes sense, right? And then they would try and stick them on afterwards, and then the super glue would just go all brittle and just fall off, because they've got these, like, you know, cowboy shaped legs so they can fit around the horse, but they were never quite the right angle. A little bit about Logan Grimnar. I've always hated Space Wolves. They're my least favourite legion by far. They're just the wolf imagery is so over the top. The square bases on the wolves. You saw square bases fairly commonly in 2nd edition, I think. I do have a bit of a connection to 3rd edition, 2nd edition, 40k, even though this is where I started in 3rd. Because I had a teacher at school whose son had loads of stuff that he didn't want anymore, and she gave me a load of old White Dwarfs from like 2nd edition 40k, and oh man, that blew my mind at how different everything was and how nothing made sense anymore and how much it had changed between 2nd and 3rd. Again with those bases, the Goblin Green bases. I mean, I don't play modern 40k, so I can't really compare this stat line to what he is now. 250 points though. Weapon skill 6 was extremely high for the time, and ballistic skill 5. It's funny that he's only got 3 wounds. I bet he'd have loads more than that now. A little advert for the Black Library there. Lizard men. Right. There's just something about the way Saurus rank up like that. Old metal Stegodon. The old chameleon skinks. I think the old Croxagors are better than the current ones, you know. So I think this is the issue before they were actually released. So this is like a little preview of what's coming next month. A little bit of a story. Okay, right. So there used to be a magazine, a sister magazine to White Dwarf called Fanatic, I think. And it was like a separate magazine just for specialist games. So I don't know if they still use that term specialist games anymore, but it meant Blood Bowl, which is obviously still around. I think it went away and then came back. Necromunda, which again went away and came back. Mordheim, which was a bit like Necromunda but for Warhammer Fantasy. It took place in this magic city and it was very heavily campaign and narrative driven, but it suffered from that thing that all Games Workshop campaigns suffer from, where as soon as someone gets a couple of wins under their belt, the rewards for winning just make them even more powerful and they run away with the whole thing. Inquisitor was, so these models here, I believe it's a 54 mil scale. Was it more than that? They're huge models basically, and I've never heard anyone actually explain what it was. I've never seen a model in real life. I don't think they can have had more than about 20 models in the range, but I think it was kind of a narrative RPG, but it was quite of a big ask to get people to model terrain in a completely different scale. So this lives on in, if you've ever seen anyone say INQ 28, 28, that's where the kind of 28 magazine thing sort of comes from. There's roots in that, and it's people trying to play the game at 28mm scale rather than this. I think it's 54. I'll look it up. So obviously you can use all of your standard 40k Necromunda terrain instead of trying to model boards in this weird scale that you couldn't use them for anything else. Warmaster was 6mm scale game set in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. There was also Epic, which was the equivalent scale for 40k. Battlefleet Gothic is spaceship combat in the Warhammer 40k universe. So it's quite sad. I mean, the whole of Fanatic magazine eventually got condensed into just these 2 pages in, 2 pages in White Dwarf, and then disappeared. So yeah, that's an Inquisitor scale demon host that someone's made. Looks pretty cool. It would probably work at 40k scale as well. Right, so this is an article about Inquisitor, which has just been released. Oh, so we are still in Fnatic. This is just the introduction for it, so it's a bit more than 2 pages. So these models are, I think they're 54. Watch it not be 54 mil now, and I'm just gonna have to correct myself on screen every single time I said it. So they're a bigger scale than 40k. I can say that with some certainty, and we've got some like Imperial agents of some kind here. Versus a Chaos Space Marine leading a little mutant warband. There was a big emphasis on conversion because there were so few models in the range. I wish I could find some more, but so this is a little article about why not the Butcher? Isn't he an Inquisitor, an Eisenhorn? Demon Sword Sark, I'm sure that's from Eisenhorn, isn't it? I think it was kind of built off the back of the success of the Eisenhorn books. But yeah, this is an article about converting a Chaos Warband using the other Inquisitor models, because I mean, if you look, you can start to see that, you know, these models are all sharing pieces because they're all based on like these guys' legs are the same, because there weren't that many models to build from. Look at these stat lines. Your weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, initiative, willpower probably. SG, I wonder what that is. NV's probably nerve, and leadership. But they seem to be out of 100 rather than out of 10. I remember being so confused about what this Inquisitor thing was about and what was going on here. They just never explained any of it. It's so dense and unbeginner friendly. So this is how we had to find out about events. Oh my god. So a bit about writing campaigns. It's really interesting. So this was the White Dwarf. So White Dwarf 257 was when they released Inquisitor. That's ages ago. This is 280 and they were monthly, so that's a few years. So it'd been out for a few years. I thought it was fairly newly released when this edition came out. I never picked up on that before. Oh, Furiosa Dreadnoughts. I also had a Blood Angels army, along with the Orcs, Demon Hunters, and yeah, everything else. This really informed my my love for Blood Angels being my favourite legion. So this is they're starting to introduce the Warhammer Fantasy Global campaign. So I mentioned that the Eye of Terror campaign is ongoing for 40k in this edition, in this issue. They were building up to the Storm of Chaos campaign, which was kind of the equivalent thing for fantasy, and it's where we get that cool Archaon model that's just been kind of issued. Right, so this is the lead up to the Eye of Terror, and I remember looking at all this artwork, and it's so strange being I'm so used to it now, having been in the hobby for 20 years, but you know, looking back, it's so weird that the art style is so different. Like from picture to picture, there's so many different art styles going on. Ah, this page, I've been waiting for this page. So, this, to introduce the Eye of Terror campaign, each faction had these little blurbs about how they kind of felt about the Eye of Terror, and the Space Marine, the Chaos Space Marine legions coming through the Eye of Terror, and I used this to inform my opinions about the factions. Like, this was the only place that I had to get a concise blurb that gave me an idea of what each faction was about. I mean, I can still remember little bits of it, like Descend from the Gulf and Feed, like that's so burned into my memory. This was 19 years ago. So, right. These are the playable factions. I'm trying to remember if this is an exhaustive list of all of them, or if there are some missing. So we've got Chaos Space Marines, Dark Eldar, Orcs, Tyrannies, Lost in the Damned, and Necrons. And Lost in the Damned were a special one that was in the Eye of Terror campaign book, which was supposed to represent chaos cults on invaded worlds, and it was all about mutants and traitors and stuff like that. But then the Tower separate, they're neither disorder or order. And then in order we've got Space Marines, Eldar, Demon Hunters, Kroot Mercenaries. Why are they in there separately as a force of order? I don't think they had an army list at the time. Ulthwé Strike Force, Imperial Guard, Sisters of Battle, Cadian Defence Force and Space Wolves, 13th Company. So the 13th Company, the Cadian Defence Force and the Ulthwé Strike Force are all in there because they were special armies that were in the Eye of Terror Codex as well. There were individual army lists for, I want to say, Space Wolves, Blood Angels and Dark Angels, which aren't included separately. Very, very strange that Sisters of Battle are in there, because I don't think they had a codex at the time, because this is before the Witch Hunters Codex came out, and I think if you wanted to play a Sisters of Battle army, you had to use the list that was in the back of the 3rd edition rulebook. It's also extremely strange that they've used a Baneblade as the image for the Imperial Guard. I suppose is this before the Cadian Shock Troop plastics were released, but that was a Forge World model. So, and the Cadian Defence Force as well, that's a Medusa, that's a Forge World model as well. Everyone else gets an illustration, but the Imperial Guard ones, I mean, I'm pretty sure, is that a photo? I think that's a photo of a model. That's so weird. I wonder why they've done that. I've got no idea where the Kroot Mercenaries came from. I wonder if whoever wrote this article just really liked Kroot. But was this really all the factions we had then? You'll notice there's no Admech, no Genestealer cults. Inquisition aren't in there as a separate thing, which is a bit strange. I would have gone Demon Hunters and Inquisition. Especially as the whole thing's been about Inquisitor. What are the 40k factions that are in there now are we missing? I feel like there's loads more than this now. Oh, so I was saying that some of the bits are like burned into my memory. So there's Descend from the Golden Fleet, and the Demon Hunters one says something about the demon coming to us, not singly or in packs, but in a, what is it? The demon comes forth, not singly or in packs, but in an innumerable tide that consumes everything in its path. And I don't know why that bit stuck with me. And just these two guys just standing against the horde of demons. There's loads of imagery like that in the Demon Hunters Codex. Maybe there'll be some in here later. Right, so this is when we really start to get into the Eye of Terror stuff. Right, so this is before it had started, before it had kicked off. So that must be, so this one, 282. So 2 months later must have been when it really started. Interesting. So this is a Battlefleet Gothic article. So it seems to be the whole army list for Space Marines. So these are the Space Marine ships for Battlefleet Gothic. And it always freaked me out that this was in centimetres and everything else was in inches. Oh, they did it really cool. Oh my god, right, this article more than anything else informed my taste in 40k. So this is about Guy Haley's Speed Freak army, and to me this is the platonic ideal of a Speed Freak army. So Speed Freaks were a separate army list from the Armageddon Codex, and it was all about orcs that live on vehicles and you know, love to go fast. It's not very red, is it? Most Speed Freaks are very, very red. So, oh man, the converted vehicles though, like that's a an Orc truck converted out of a 2nd edition Space Marine Rhino. That looks really cool. All of these bikes have had something done to them. I think he's changed the riders to make them look more in scale. He's done it for the buggies as well. All of the crew are different. So the crew, well, the riders for the bikes and the crew for the buggies and the trucks. So he hasn't got like an actual standard Orc truck model from the time in this army. They were all from a much older era, and they were all way out of scale with the actual infantry. The more you look, the more you can see like little details, and it's like a grot with some bagpipes. Looks like it. So I think that's. I'm not sure to what extent that's a conversion. I think it is. I don't think it would have had tracks. I think that's actually quite an extensive conversion of the old battle wagon model. So I've never seen one of those in real life. I think that's pretty much stock battle wagon. That's a buggy, and those two are war tracks, which were functionally the same under the rules, but it must have been a hangover from Gorka Morka, which I don't really know anything about. And that's a looted basilisk. And I remember him talking about, oh my god, talking about the things that are kind of etched into my mind. So he's got a whole thing talking about his basilisk and about how it hardly ever works, but he loves it anyway. So the looted wagon rules in the Speed Freaks list took a vehicle from a list from another faction as it was presented in their codex for the same points and everything. And then you had to roll a dice every turn, and something like if it was a 1, then it breaks down. If it's a 6, then it just charges off towards the nearest enemy. So he chose a basilisk, which wants to be just sitting at the back and not doing anything, and there's a chance that it might just zip off towards the enemy. So this is him talking about how it's a really suboptimal choice. Gun trucks are nice and cheap. Battle wagons are better. They've got fantastic armour. My preference is the looted vehicle. I have a basilisk, parked hull down with a force field and covered by the ubiquitous armour plates. It's relatively tough. It's a fearsome sight that unnerves my opponents. And here's some. These things are so useless. It's like tactical theory about how you should deploy against different enemies, and it's like, oh, well, if the devilfish is here, then you want to put your unit of buggies here and charge it. It's like, but your opponent gets a say as well. Why are you just assuming they'll be? Why are you just assuming they'll be sitting there and letting you do it? Oh, this page, right. So hopefully you can see on the camera how tiny that guy is. The Orc Warbike was my first 40k model. It cost £5 back then. This war boss, I had that war boss as well, and the boys. I think I had a track as well, and a truck. Right, so everyone always talks about the Defcopters. So plastic Defcopters that were only available in the, I want to say, the Assault on Black Reach box set, and they've not been made available since. Well, that's not strictly true. You could order the individual bits called winch and frame, chassis, engine, rotor blade support, crew, harpoon gunner. You could order all these pieces and use it to make an old Defcopter model. And I remember, like, before I really understood how, WYSIWYG and conversions and stuff worked, I was like, oh, well, I want a truck, but I want to give it a battering ram, so I've got to set aside 50p to buy this ram from the components, because you used to be able to order all individual metal components from Games Workshop stores, and sometimes they just refuse to do it. Wow. I think I knew him. I think I knew that guy from the Birmingham store. Best tank model they ever did. I love this model. I said before, there's just something about like the snub-nosed thing. I mean, realistically, like it can probably barely shoot past the front of the thing. Like if it was angled down, how are you gonna hit anything directly in front of you? Oh, love that model. So this is part of that weird time of Games Workshop models that newer fans will not understand at all, where you had hybrid plastic and metal kits. I don't know if it'll show it later, probably not, but so the hull is, and the turret is from a Predator, and then I think the sponsons, see they've got the Blood Angels blood drop on them, those were metal. The assault cannons were metal, the little crew guy was metal, and this little thing on the front's metal. And metal and plastic just don't bond together very well, so they would just fall apart instantly. But oh man, I just love the way that model looks. It looks so cool. Furioso Dreadnought again. This is a really funny one because I can't remember if the whole thing was metal. I think the whole thing was metal, but you could just buy the one arm and then use the plastic Dreadnought because which obviously came with one close combat arm. I can't remember which side's which. So typically the old Dreadnought would have either your close combat Dreadnought Power Fist, or it would have the missile launcher. Then the other side would be a ranged weapon, las cannon or heavy bolter or whatever. And you could just parts order the arm from the Furioso Dreadnought and use a plastic Dreadnought and just stick it on. I think that's right. Am I right in saying that? Someone will correct me in the comments. The Heavy Metal Masterclass. I can't believe they resisted the urge to put Goblin Green on the edge of the bases. So, you know, looking back, they don't look that good by modern standards. Dare I say it? Wow. Oh, look at some of the names of the paints. Scorched Brown, Chaos Black, Fortress Grey, Codex Grey, Dark Angels Green, Bronzed Flesh, Bleach Bone, all very non-copyrightable. Oh, Ushabti. Newer players may recognise that name from the paint Ushabti Bone. And here's the battle report. This is a really cool battle report. So it's between Ulthwé, Eldar, and Demon Hunters. Yeah, so these are the old Cadian Shock Troop models, and these are the old Stormtrooper models. So these were then semi-replaced by the Kazrakin models, which will come out in a couple of issues' time, and then replaced again by the Militarum Tempestus models, and then the Kazrakin models have come back out, but they're all basically Stormtroopers. So in the Demon Hunters army book codex, you could take allies. So because the Grey Knights themselves are so expensive in points and money, they let you take either Space Marine or Imperial Guard allies, but you couldn't take Space Marine allies if you had Grey Knights in the list. So the idea was that you might do a radical force with Space Marine allies, and you could also ally in Demon Hunters units to those other armies, I think. So from this, his HQ is a Grandmaster, who'll be this guy, with retinues. They used to have retinues, so your HQ choice could make a bodyguard as like a separate unit that came under the same HQ choice. So instead of being elites like the Terminators would have been, they're just part of that same HQ choice. So he's got these 3 bodyguard Terminators, and then you could have Inquisitors as, there was like a more powerful one as an HQ version, or a less powerful one as an elites version. He's gone for the elites one over here with his little group of friends. is the Rhino dedicated transport for someone? I think that's the transport for the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers. So the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers are a troop's choice from the Demon Hunters book. And then, is that... Right, so one of these units is a troop's choice, and the other one is a fast attack choice. So to just flesh the book out a bit and give you some more choices, you could take a squad of normal Grey Knights in power armour as a fast attack choice, and they could deep strike. That was the difference. We've got a Death Cop assassin, and what kind of assassin is that? That is a Calexis assassin. And then everything else, these 4 units are one troop's choice. I think it's one infantry platoon, one Imperial Guard infantry platoon. Very strange army composition for the time, especially because allies weren't really a thing. I know it got big in 6th and 7th edition, I think, but mixing and matching stuff from different books was really unique at the time. Oh, I love this army. This looks so cool. The old 2nd edition yellow and black. I've only just noticed that I think these are old Guardian models. Like, are they metal maybe? I'm not sure. Or was he used like I don't think, is that an Eldar head? I don't know enough about it. Wait, what's going on with this? No, I think that is an Eldar head. It just looks a bit kind of vampiric, doesn't it? The old Avatar model. Right, this thing came with like a big flowing top knot, like a big hair that came off this, I don't know what you call that, this spike on his head. And the whole thing was metal, and it had the tiniest little contact point, and it was impossible to get it to stay on. And I've only just noticed, after years of having read and reread this thing, that the top knot's missing. Notice that the weapon platforms don't seem to have bases. I think they're on flying bases, but the things are so small that you can't even see them. They don't protrude past the edge of the platform. This is an old Wraith Lord. And so that's a metal Wraith Lord, and then he's used that piece is from the old Harlequin jet bikes, that face. So that was like the canopy, the front bit. Interesting that Vipers are heavy support in this. I would have assumed they'd be fast attack. It's interesting as well how much infantry there is. In both forces, actually. I don't think you would see that in a modern 40k army so much infantry. And I think I'm right in saying that the Eldar were trying to summon a demon. Yeah, there we go. So the plot twist of this, spoiler alert, is that at some point, through very contrived circumstances, I'm sure, the Eldar managed to summon a Lord of Change. But it just uses this generic stat line for demons of adversaries of the Grey Knights. These battle reports were always so kind of contrived. It was really just to showcase the new thing, in this case being the Grey Knights, the Demon Hunters. And so there were rumours of them just making up what happened, and that they claimed that they played multiple games and then just went with whichever one was the most narratively satisfying. Oh, there was one, I think it might be in the Beastman one, which I might have here. So it was like a running joke that you always knew that the new army was going to win, because it was like to show off how good they were. But I think it was the Beastmen one where they played multiple games and the Beastmen couldn't win because they were so bad. Oh, I can't remember which army that was. There was one that famously didn't win its battle report because the army wasn't very good. So, and then at the end you have your little catalogue showing you what you can buy. So these are the Demon Host models that I forgot about before. £5 for one, not bad. Oh, the Rhino used to be £15. I remember when it went up to 80s and it seemed like a massive imposition. And all the different metal parts. So you could order, and they've all got the part numbers and the prices. So if you just wanted to get, there's an article. It might be earlier in this thing actually. There's an article somewhere where they make a servo skull out of the Colexus assassin head. It's a really good idea. Just £2 and then put it on a flying stand. I've never noticed these models before. Frateris Militia. What are they from? I've never noticed them existing before. And here's the stuff for the Eldar. So you can see the top knot on that avatar there. The one in this book didn't have. See, these have got nice brown base edges, although it's a different shade of brown than some of the others. Very strange. You could have just bought the crystal from the Eldar Fire Prism if you wanted for £1. I'm not surprised they stopped doing that. So that's the end of the main section. And then at the end of every White Dwarf for a long time, they had a section on Lord of the Rings. So I believe the Two Towers came out in 2002. So this is its 20th anniversary. So it would have been a year old at the time. And they would have that as a separate thing because I think, whereas all the other bits are mixed in together, I think the perception was that people who played Lord of the Rings probably came to that external from the hobby because of the IP attached to it. And they probably only played the Lord of the Rings game rather than the other 40k and fantasy. So let's have a quick flick through this bit. I mean, I imagine a lot of these models haven't really changed since this came out. We can look at the prices though. Legolas and Gimli on horseback for £6. Little scenario rules here. Painting masterclass. Painting horses is always hard. Yeah, and just a price list. So I'll see if any of these models are still around and we can do a comparison. But so Warriors of Rohan, 24 Warriors of Rohan for £12, 50p a model. 50p a model seems to be the going rate. Riders of Rohan, 6 for £12. Uruk-hai, 20 for £12. Heroes of Helm's Deep, Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn, Haldir, Theoden, Eowyn, Gamling, and an elven standard bearer. How did he get in there? For £25. So this would have been the starter set. So 160-page full-colour manual, which is this, I guess. 12 Riders of Rohan, 20 Uruk-hai, 1 building and dice. So it's 12. So it's that, 2 of that, a building and some dice. Does it mean riders? Yeah, it does. Wow. Okay. That's a good deal. That's... What's that? 20 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus building plus dice. For £40. Wow. I wonder how much that'd be worth now. Oh, Merry and Pippin versus Grishnak. Who's buying the Merry and Pippin on the floor running away from that one orc that wanted to eat them? Meat's back on the menu, etc., etc. This is one of those ones that stuck with me. Their method for making thatch is such a good idea. They take this teddy bear hair and then put PVA glue on it to like mat it down and then paint it. It looks so cool. Really effective bit of terrain, I think, for that. I mean, do they still do articles like this, or do they just want people to buy their plastic terrain? Or is just making everything out of like foam core and what, these lollipop sticks or coffee stirrers or something? Oh, and this foam that you can't even really get in Britain anymore. Another painting workshop. I think they were just trying to pad it out. 2 painting workshops in one Lord of the Rings section. And another scenario. Wow. Who was Damrod? I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? The Two Towers, and we're talking about Faramir, spotting a large orc force some miles north of Osgiliath. Right, I think that's the final page. Okay, so on the off chance that you enjoyed that and want to see more, give me a like, I guess. Drop a comment down below to correct me on anything. Feel free. Yeah, that's it. Let me know if you want me to go through the other ones as well. Hopefully that's interesting for new people and old people, but I don't know. All right, bye.